because they're killed at a pedestrian crossing by a drunk driver. That's consequence. And when people start to think about consequences, I think they become more reasonable in at least discussing what has led to those consequences. When you're stuck in the mire of I'm right, you're wrong, and this is a safe level and this is not, and I think we get nowhere. And the consequences right now of people not taking care are full ICUs, people dead before their time, the long-term COVID haulers who are now struggling with long-term impacts of COVID, and more people dying than need to or should die before we get to the era of vaccination. And right now in this stretch, and I would say it's at least 4 to 6 months before we have significant levels of vaccination going on anywhere, we have to get through this. And the only way we get through this is finding a way to behave that's functional and that reduces risks and actually avoids those awful consequences. And I see it every night on TV, or we see it in the newspapers, those personal stories of the loss that people have suffered. And the virus that killed them came from somewhere. It came from the community, from us, and our behavior determines those consequences. So reasonable, respectful dialogue, push good information. Don't expect your argument to win. It's not about winning the argument. It's about changing behavior and changing expectations around behavior. I think if we take that approach, we'll bring more people with us on this journey. And we may win less arguments, but does that really matter?
We have this hashtag of in this together.
Yes.
And you hear us talk all the time that we're in this together. And the Director General talks about this all the time. We really mean that. I mean, even in areas that have brought this under control, I think we are in this together because we live on an interconnected planet. We share the same space. We are all people. And we need this collective attitude to say we can do this. And it is important for every single one of us. I mean, it would be very hard to find someone who is not impacted by this pandemic one way or another, either directly through losing a loved one who cannot be replaced, through either knowing someone who's lost someone, losing their job, losing the certainty of a young person, who's graduating high school and what am I going to do in my college, to I don't know anyone that isn't impacted by this. And so these individuals, we all have stories, we all have something to contribute, but this is a serious disease. This can kill. This is killing people. But at the same time, there's so much that we can do to prevent that from happening. If we can think collectively about the prevention aspect of it, because that is within our power to do, this vaccine, when it is available, vaccines, I will say, when these vaccines are available, it will, be that last thing that can help in addition to everything else that we are doing. But we need a collective energy around ending this together. And I just, we had a question the other day at the press conference, and the question was, does the vaccine, the results from the Pfizer vaccine or the Moderna, or does it give you hope? And of course it gives us hope. But I want every single person to realize, I'm the hope. You're the hope. Every single person watching is the hope to get us through this, because we have the tools to get us through this. So a vaccine makes us think in the long term, how are we going to get through this through next year? But I'm the hope, and so are you watching. And we all need to come together to be able to do this. And that is this rainbow that my son draws, all of us are, that's what we need to think. And I know that days are very hard. We've all had very difficult weeks, and for me in particular, the last couple of weeks have been really difficult. But we have hope, and I get accused of being too hopeful. But you know what? I will carry that with me every single day, because we have amazing teams that are working all over the world. There are frontline workers that get out of bed every day, that are putting themselves at risk. We have people who are canceling family gatherings, who are canceling my son's birthday, except we did 5 hours of Zoom birthday and made fools of ourselves and danced on camera. But that's a little sacrifice to make if we can contribute to ending this pandemic. What are the sacrifices that you can make? We have many holidays that are coming up towards the end of the year, and more than anything, we want to be with our families, and we don't want to be just with our immediate families, and some of us may not be with our immediate families. We want to be with our extended families. Maybe it's just not the year to do that, and that's a really hard thing to say. But these are the decisions that we're going to have to make, and these are hard decisions that we need to make. So.
Thank you very much, Maria. We are running out of time, but I think we need to address the questions that we receive from children, actually from parents who shared what are the most asked questions from their kids in this pandemic. And on Friday is World Children's Day, and you just said everyone is affected. That includes our children. Maybe we can you just mentioned your son's birthday was recently, he turned 10. How do you explain this situation to your child to understand the danger of this virus, but on the other side as well, that he's not in fear?
Well, all of us who are parents, we get really tough questions from our kids because they're blunt, they're direct, and there's nowhere to hide from any of those kinds of questions. And so for my son, I have two children. I have one who's almost 2 years old who's oblivious to this and just plays with cars, and I'm thrilled that he's oblivious to all of this. And he's a happy little tyke. My older one, who just turned 10, he knows what's going on around him and his friends. And for him, he's seen the evolution of this from the beginning. I think the scariest thing for him in the beginning was, first of all, I just wasn't around. I was really largely absent. And then when I went to China for a few weeks, he was really scared that I wasn't going to come home. Because you can't see viruses. You can't see it's something happening somewhere else. So we talked about it. He knows what I do, and I've gone to his school before and described that some of the work that we do are these disease detectives. And we look for these rare pathogens, and we try to help people and make sure it doesn't. But we talk about it a lot, and he asks a lot of questions, and I'm honest with him. The fear factor is something that we have to acknowledge, and we talk about, and then we break it down. Like, what is it that is actually scaring you? Is it something that you're thinking is scary that I can help answer a question to? Or is it something, is it something that we know and I can help explain it? But I don't lie to him. I tell him if I know something, and I tell him if I don't know something. But how I reassure him is that there are millions of people around the world that are working against this virus, and arguably billions of people around the world that are fighting against this virus, and we're in this together. So he didn't have a birthday party with his friends physically, but we had different Zoom parties. So we're just finding ways to make this work for us. We are on a bit of a roller coaster, and it has twists and it turns and ups and downs, and some roller coasters go forwards and some go backwards, but we will get off this ride at some point, and we'll do it together. But we're very lucky that we have a really wonderful unit with my husband and the little one, and we just do our best every single day. I don't have any magic stories. I don't have any, we do our best every single day, but we talk a lot about it, and when we don't want to talk about it, we play. So that's what we do.
Thank you, Maria. Mike, maybe you can answer the next one. I know your kids are a bit older, teenagers, but if you had younger children, or if your kids were younger at this moment, how would you explain to them why did COVID came in the first place?
For me, and I'm trying to think, the quote on this, I think it was Margaret Mead, who said that children should be taught how to think, not what to think. So I think that's, I wouldn't even try to sort of give a blow by blow, this is what you need to know, because I don't think that's how my kids would certainly absorb information. I think they need to know what they should be thinking about, where they need to go and get their information. I'd more ask them questions and then have a dialogue, like I said before. So I think there's too much talking at children, particularly youth, and that just doesn't work. So no, I would. I think the other thing that I think, particularly with teenagers, is I sense that there's this perception that teenagers are selfish, and they're going through their selfish phase, and people are locked in their rooms and, you know, don't want to engage with society. And this sort of mantra builds up. And I don't think that's true at all. And I think that's what you have to, I try anyway in my relationship with my kids, is to really to try and access that place of compassion, altruism, looking out for others, putting themselves in the other's place. One of the things I think in youth, and we were all young, what did they say, that adults are just outdated children, you know? So when you look back, and we all look at that, and people talk about the selfishness of youth. Well, it's not selfishness of youth. There's an absorption about youth, because you're experiencing a lot of things in your life for the first time. And you resent when you can't experience those things. And how many kids this year have missed their school tours, or they've missed a school trip, or they've missed the school show, and they can't. My daughter Circa, they were supposed to put on the big school show this year, and drama queen that she is, that's a big thing, because they had a big plan for that. You have kids in transition year in school who get to travel in different parts of the world and they're not getting that this year, or do work experience. So, you know, it's not about the selfishness of youth. It's that very often, as a younger person, you're experiencing things, big things, for the first time in your life, and you really commit to them. And okay, that may look like selfishness, but it's not. It's the way we learn to be adults. But there isn't a teenager I know that won't sit down and have a good conversation around their responsibilities and what they need to do, and their power to be activists and to turn that around. And I'm seeing that more and more. But I think we have this, I think adults or older people have as many prejudices about how youth think as youth have about how older people think. And that has been there forevermore. We need it, because obviously we need new arts, and we need new visions for the future. And the way society actually develops is the young generation is essentially supposed to programmed to think that the last lot had it all wrong, right? That's part of how society evolves. That's where the innovation and the creativity and the desire for better, fairer systems come from, is the hope of youth and the desire of youth for something different. And the day that stops, I'll be very worried. The day the youth become some facsimile of the previous generation will be very dangerous for human civilization if that ever happens. The problem is, in an outbreak of COVID, we've got to come together. We've got to find a common way to do things for a little while, and then the youth can go back to challenging everything about the previous generation, which they should. But I think we need to find, and that's what I try to find with people, youth groups and people I've spoken to my own kids, is can we forge an alliance around this? This affects all of our futures. And this has a profound impact on the lifespan of an 80-year-old neighbour, and your long-term education, and your mum or dad's job. Everything is at stake here. The whole of society is at stake. It's all of us. So we need to find an all-of-us solution, which we all can contribute to. It's not them and us. It's not over there and not over here. It's all of us, it's everywhere. And I think, and I've seen a massive response from youth around that issue. I've certainly seen, in my own country, you know, when everyone went back to college, there were all these house parties, and it was kind of hero activism stuff. I'm having a house party, you know. Now I think people have changed, and they've said, hang on, what, you're having a house party? You know, what kind of lunatic are you, you know? And that's changed over a couple of months. Yeah. And I think people have kind of woken up to, is it really cool? Is it that cool to have a house party and bring 100 people to it and be there for hours and have any number of them go home at the weekend to their parents or their grandparents and pass on a disease? Is that cool? Is that really what we should be aiming for? And I think that's what youth themselves have decided. Hey, that's just plain stupid. And I think, but I think younger people need to make their minds up for themselves on that. And again, I'm back to what I said at the beginning. Don't tell people what to think. Tell them, teach them, show them how to think. And I think I have great faith in the youth. They're doing it.
I see it with my son. When he, you know, when we talk about these different actions of washing your hands and wearing the mask and school and the physical distancing, he'll point it out to me and to others, you know, that, Mom, they're not, you know, they're not. And in fact, he told his teacher on the first day, I'm very sorry to you're not wearing your mask right. And I was like, oh, don't do that. but the honesty, I know. But he meant it in a kind way. But I think we're seeing. I do. But the behavior change. You know, the kids are doing it, and they're seeing it, and they're seeing you. If you see images of children in school, you see them at their separate desks. You see them doing different things in the lines. And when you ask the question that was asked before about the behavior change and doing all that, we're seeing it happen. I mean, we're now almost a year into this, and there are things that are taking hold in terms of our everyday. And I think that will come, but it's hard. It's hard to uproot your life and do everything different. But these are little things that we can manage.
Thank you very much. There were questions coming. Parents were sharing that kids are asking why everyone is not wearing a mask. On the other side, they were also asking, why do we need to wear a mask in schools? It's uncomfortable when we are playing on the ground. And one more question that came that I thought it's that some kids are scared. And what I'm gonna do if you and Daddy get sick? So this is another question and fear that kids have shared.
I think that last one that you mentioned about what happens if my mommy and daddy get sick. I mean, we've talked about, my husband and I have talked about this because we live in Switzerland and our extended family is not here. I know many people would come and offer help for us, but make a plan with your family. You know, you've heard me say make a plan before, but make that plan with your family and really kind of talk through some of the situations that you may experience. If somebody feels unwell, if somebody is sick with COVID. But, you know, we live in the Northern Hemisphere and we're in an area where there could be other things circulating. People have allergies. You could have the common cold. There's many reasons why you may be sick. It may not be COVID, but make a plan. You know, and talk it through with the kids. But I wholeheartedly agree with Mike on the not talking to, talking with. And with the youngest kids, the really, really little ones, drawing pictures, you know, doing different things through different ways to communicate, to talk about some of these things. We have an image on our refrigerator, and Cole calls it the COVID passport. And it's a picture of the virus that he drew, and it said, you know, that it was traveling around, and so he was mentioning different countries, and these are different ways in which we can talk about some of these different things, but do the best you can. I mean, do the best you can.
Yeah, and the issue with masks is important because there's a perception that masks, and something that masks are the answer. They're a huge part of the answer, particularly in areas of high community transmission. But if you're living in somewhere like New Zealand today, or you're living in another country with very low incidence, you may not need to wear a mask in normal life. So the mask guidance and even the physical and social distancing guidance is very dependent on the local transmission. So if we work hard, and this is the bonus in a sense, the lower the level of community transmission, and if like some countries you get to zero transmission, in New Zealand a couple of weeks ago there were 47,000 people at a rugby match. You know, it's not impossible because they crushed the virus. So I think this issue of when you're left in a situation of intense community transmission and your intensive care units are full, the government have to take out all of the options and everyone has to wear a mask everywhere and no one can go anywhere and everyone has to stay home. That's a consequence of the virus taking control. The more we take control, the more we can lift those sorts of restrictions. And for example, now with masks, many countries are even saying you have to wear a mask outside in any situation, because it's not that they believe that the disease is flying through the air in a field. They're just trying to drive home this idea that we're in such a bad situation that we need people to mask almost all the time because we're so afraid of transmission. And I think that's part of the problem that people have. Just on the issue of kids, it's really important that we don't underestimate or in some senses dismiss the concerns that kids have. We need to talk about these things with kids, specifically young kids, And kids have these fears, and there's nothing more devastating in the life of a child than a sick parent or a death of a parent. I lost my own dad when I was 11, and it's horrific. And I saw my younger brothers and the pain they went through in that process, not understanding. And, this is not fair. What have I done? And centering the blame on themselves and feeling in some way guilty about things. So kids process things in strange ways. They often turn that in on themselves. So it's really important that it stays open, that kids are allowed to express their fears, that they're allowed to articulate those. They find ways that, as you said, even the youngest of kids can find artistic and other ways to do that. It's really important that that's kept open and that it's not pushed to the side. And then that you can be rational in reducing their level of concern. And that's really important too. It's not just about having the fear out there, it's about helping them to manage that, giving them again the right information and allowing them, giving them skills in how to process, activities in which they can process those concerns. It's real. And a lot of kids in this have lost grandparents in this response. And a lot of, I know kids who have lost grandparents that they didn't see for 3 or 4 months, people who were really close to. All of you out there, I mean, think of that one grandparent, that really special person in your life. And I think there's quite a bit of trauma out there amongst kids who are grandkids, not just of the children of older people who died, but the grandkids of older people that died. And there's a reckoning that comes with that as well. So the grieving process for kids, it's tough because you don't have all the natural things, the funeral situation, you don't get to say goodbye, you don't have the gatherings. So it's grieving interrupted, and we need to look at that because there is a process that we all go through in grief, and that's being interrupted by the COVID just as much as our social activities are being interrupted. And quite frankly, I'm not so concerned if my ability to go to the pub and have a pint is interrupted. I am concerned if a child's need to grieve the loss of a grandparent has been interrupted, because that can have a lifelong impact. So I think we need to think about how we allow kids both to feel fear, to grieve and do all of these other things, and also to be part of the solution, because they're a powerful part of our society.
So it's again, Mike, as you said earlier, thinking about consequences. So Maria, having in mind consequences, how we can protect ourselves, our kids, but also to set a good example for them, can you summarize once again, what do we have in a toolkit to fight this virus?
I keep thinking of this image. I keep thinking of we bought this book once with my son. I think he was 5, and it was called Be a Superhero, and there were little things you could cut out and wear a mask, and we each had capes, and we have this image of us, and we're silly in some Sunday morning or something. And I keep thinking of this over and over and over again, especially with kids, to be your own superhero, to use these tools that we have. So whatever it is that makes you feel powerful, however old you are, dress up as that superhero figuratively or literally, and use the tools that you have. We do have tools, Alex. We have physical distancing. We have masks. We have hand gel. We have soap. We have water. And there's a huge global effort to make sure that we have soap and water all over the world so that people can clean their hands. We have the ability to open windows and doors, and in many situations to improve natural ventilation in the rooms that we are in if we are indoors. We have information, and we have good information. There are good sources of information that exist all over the world, whether it's through WHO or your local authorities. Find that good information, push out that bad information and that negative information. That's really important for our mental health. And we have information about not only where the virus is, but what are risky behaviors and what are the things that we can do to minimize those risky behaviors. And many of us, not everybody, but many of us, we have the power to make decisions. So these are the tools that we have every single day. I may be forgetting some of the individual tools, so remind me if I've forgotten some, but I just keep thinking of all of the different things that we can. We have powerful tools right now that make us the heroes and make us become the superheroes fighting against this virus.
Thank you very much. We went over the time, but I really appreciate your effort and time to answer all the questions. There were many more, but I had to select, and especially those that were coming from kids. many viewers are watching us from many countries. I'll name a few: Turkey, South Africa, the USA, India, Denmark, Sweden, Russia, Romania, Azerbaijan, Mali, Ghana, including DRC, Peru, Zambia, Bosnia, Botswana, Argentina, Canada, Germany, Thailand. So it's really west and east, north and south. So we thank you everyone for watching us. We thank you everyone for your questions. And you've heard Maria and Mike what we can do to end this pandemic, and that we are in this together. Until next Wednesday, stay safe.